Most people think flirting is obvious. A touch on the arm, a compliment, prolonged eye contact. But here's the truth. The signals that actually mean someone is deeply interested in you, they're almost invisible. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what they look like, so you never miss them again. Before we begin, subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my stuff. With that said, let's get started. You're talking to someone. The conversation is good. There's something in the air. You can feel it, but you can't quite name it. And afterward, you walk away wondering, was that flirting? Did I just completely miss something? Or am I reading into nothing? If you've ever been in that situation, you are not alone. And this video is going to fix that. Because today, we're breaking down 5 flirting signals that most people miss completely. Not the textbook stuff, not the obvious things everyone already knows about. The real signals. The ones that fly under the radar. The ones that once you know them, you'll start seeing everywhere. Before we get into the 5 signals, I want to reframe something. Because the way most people think about flirting is exactly what makes them miss it. Most people think flirting looks like this. Someone walks up to you, gives you a compliment, holds eye contact a beat too long, and maybe finds a reason to touch your arm. And yes, that can be flirting, but that's the surface level. That's what you see in movies. And in real life, most people, especially people who are genuinely interested, don't flirt that obviously. Why? Because being obvious is vulnerable. It's risky. When you flirt openly and clearly, you're putting yourself out there, and most people are terrified of that. So what do they do instead? They signal. They test. They send out messages that are just subtle enough that if you don't respond, they can pretend it never happened. Just ambiguous enough to protect them if the feeling isn't mutual. That's what we're decoding today. Those quiet, deliberate, carefully calibrated signals that people send when they're genuinely interested but not ready to say it directly. Pay attention, because once you see these, you cannot unsee them. Signal 1. They remember things you never expected them to remember. This one is quiet, easily missed, and it is one of the most reliable indicators of real interest there is. Think about the last meaningful conversation you had with someone you were interested in. I'd be willing to bet you remember most of it. The details, the little things they mentioned in passing, the name of their dog, the city they grew up in, the thing they said about their job that made you laugh. You remember it because you were paying attention, because something about them made every word feel worth keeping. That is exactly what's happening when someone is into you and remembers the small things you said. When someone brings up something you mentioned 2 weeks ago, something casual, something you barely thought about when you said it, that's not coincidence. That's not just a good memory. That is someone who was listening closely, someone who filed that detail away, someone who cared enough about you to hold on to it. It might sound like, "Hey, how did that thing with your sister go?" when you mentioned it briefly in one conversation. Or, "Did you ever end up trying that restaurant you were talking about?" when you'd barely made it a full sentence the first time. These moments feel small, but they are not small. They are the fingerprints of someone who thinks about you when you're not in the room. And here's what makes this signal so easy to miss. We tend to interpret it as just someone being a good friend. Nice, attentive. But there's a difference between someone who remembers things about everyone and someone who remembers things specifically about you, in detail, consistently, over time. The latter isn't general kindness, it's specific interest. And the specificity is the signal. So the next time someone recalls something you said offhandedly, something you almost forgot you mentioned, don't just feel flattered and move on. Pay attention. That is someone telling you in the most careful and deniable way they know how that you matter to them.
Signal 2. They find reasons to extend the conversation even when there's nothing left to say. You've been there. The conversation has naturally wound down. You've covered the topic. There's a natural pause. A normal person lets it end. But this person, they find something else. Another question, another observation, something they just thought of. Anything to keep things going a little longer. This happens in person and it happens over text, and it is one of the clearest signs of interest that almost no one consciously registers. Here's the psychology. Time is the most honest currency we have. People do not spend time, real, willing, unobligated time, on things and people they don't care about. When someone is looking for reasons to stay in a conversation, they are telling you something. not with words, with behavior. And behavior is always more honest than words. Over text, this looks like responding to the last thing you said and then immediately adding something new. A meme, a question that has nothing to do with what you were talking about. Oh, by the way, followed by something completely unrelated. They're not done. They don't want to be done, and they're hoping you don't want to be done either. In person, it looks like finding reasons to linger, standing near you a little longer than makes practical sense, asking follow-up questions when the conversation could naturally close, noticing when you're about to leave and suddenly having one more thing to say. What makes this signal so easy to dismiss is that we tell ourselves they're just being friendly, they're just chatty, maybe they're just bored, and sometimes that's true, but here's the test. Do they do this with everyone, or do they do it specifically with you? Because if someone who isn't particularly chatty becomes very invested in keeping your conversation alive, that is not chattiness. That is attraction, and it is worth noticing. Signal 3. Their body rotates toward you, even when their words don't have to. This one is entirely unconscious, which is exactly what makes it so reliable. We have very little control over where our bodies point when we're in a group. We can control what we say, we can control how we say it, but the direction our feet face, the angle our shoulders turn, the way our whole physical presence orients itself in a room, that happens below the level of conscious thought, and it almost always points toward whatever the nervous system considers most important. When someone is interested in you, their body follows. They will turn toward you in a group, even when talking to someone else. Their feet will point in your direction, even when they're not directly addressing you. Their shoulders will angle your way during a group conversation when they could just as easily face the center. Their body language will include you, even when the words don't. Think about the last time you were in a group setting with someone you were attracted to. Where were you facing? Probably toward them, even when you weren't talking to them directly. That's not a decision you made. That's your nervous system saying, this person matters. So watch for this. When you're in a group and someone consistently orients their body toward you, not just their eyes, but their whole physical presence, that is your nervous system reading theirs correctly. They're interested. They may not know it consciously. They certainly haven't said it, but their body already has. There's another layer to this that's worth mentioning: mirroring. When someone is drawn to you, they will often unconsciously mirror your body language. If you lean back, they lean back. If you tilt your head, they do the same a few seconds later. If you cross your arms, they may follow. This is a deeply human phenomenon. We mirror the people we feel connected to. It's our nervous system saying, I'm with you. I'm tuned into you. I feel what you feel. It sounds subtle. It is subtle. But once you start watching for it, you will see it clearly, and it tells you everything. Signal 4. They tease you, but only you. This is one of the most misread signals in existence, and missing it has cost people more than they realize. Here's what I mean. There's a person in your life who gives you a hard time. They make fun of your taste in music. They call you out when you say something dramatic. They tease you about that thing you said that one time and won't let it go. And you've been sitting there thinking, do they even like me? They like you. That teasing is not accidental. It is not them being mean. It is them being drawn to you and not knowing how to say it. When someone teases you, specifically and consistently, it means several things. First, they're paying close enough attention to have material to work with. You cannot tease someone you don't notice. Second, they've made a judgment that you're secure enough to handle it, which is its own form of respect. Third, and most importantly, they want a reaction from you. They want you engaged. They want you to push back, to laugh, to interact with them in a way that's different from how you interact with everyone else. Teasing creates a private dynamic, an inside joke in the making, a specific energy between two people that doesn't exist with anyone else in the room. And that specificity, that this is just between us quality, is often exactly what someone is trying to create when they're interested but not ready to be direct about it. Now, there's an important distinction here. There's teasing that comes from warmth, light, playful, with a smile underneath it. And there's teasing that comes from a genuine unkindness or superiority. They feel different. You'll know which one you're dealing with. Warm teasing has an edge, but it doesn't sting. It invites you in rather than pushing you down. If someone teases you in a way that makes you feel small or genuinely uncomfortable, that is not flirting. That is something else entirely.
But if someone teases you in a way that makes you smile, even when you're pretending to be annoyed, pay attention. That light, specific, just for you ribbing is one of the quietest and most honest expressions of I like.
Signal 5. They get slightly nervous or different around you, compared to everyone else. This is the one that most people are the worst at reading, because when someone we're interested in makes us a little nervous, they tend to interpret that as a bad sign, as awkwardness, as discomfort, when in reality, it's often the opposite. Here's the psychological truth. We are most aware of ourselves in front of people who matter to us. When we're with people we're completely comfortable with, we don't really think about how we're coming across. We just exist. But when someone catches our attention, when we care what they think, when we want to make a certain impression, we become hyper-aware. And that hyper-awareness shows up as what looks like nervousness. It looks like stumbling slightly over words they'd normally say with ease, laughing a little too quickly at something that was only mildly funny, fixing their hair or their clothes when you look at them, going quiet in a conversation they're otherwise very comfortable in, suddenly becoming more careful, more considered, more self-aware, specifically in your presence. Now, to be clear, nervousness alone doesn't mean attraction. Some people are just anxious. But the key is comparison. How does this person behave with everyone else? Are they confident, easy, relaxed, and then subtly different around you? That shift is the signal. That change in baseline is your information. There's also the opposite version of this, and it's equally telling. Some people, when they're attracted to someone, don't go quieter. They go louder. They become more animated, more expressive, more on. They tell better stories. They're funnier. They're more energetic. It looks like confidence, and it is, but it's a specific, directed, heightened version of themselves that gets activated by your presence. Both versions, the nervous, quieter one and the energized, louder one, are saying the same thing. You affect them. And when you affect someone the way attraction does, it almost never goes unnoticed by their body, even when their words stay completely neutral. So let's bring this all together. 5 signals. 5 quiet, easy to miss, incredibly telling ways that someone communicates interest before they're ready to say it directly. They remember the small things you said because they were paying close attention. They find reasons to extend the conversation because they don't want it to end. Their body turns toward you because attraction is physical before it's verbal. They tease you specifically because they want a private dynamic with you. And they get slightly different around you because you affect them in a way they can't fully hide. None of these signals are loud. None of them are obvious. That's exactly why most people miss them. But now you know what to look for. And knowing is the difference between watching something real pass you by and actually doing something about it. Here's the question I want to leave you with. Is there someone in your life right now who has been showing you one of these signals? Think about it honestly, because sometimes the answer has been right in front of us all along. Leave a comment below. Tell me which signal surprised you the most, or tell me about a time you missed one of these and only realized it later. I want to hear from you. If this video helped you, subscribe to Love Decoded. We release new videos every week that decode exactly this kind of thing, the parts of attraction and relationships that nobody explains clearly enough. Share this with someone who needs it, and I'll see you in the next.